welcome to the Go-Kart Guru 2020 review. And what we're going to review is, obviously, we're going to be reviewing what we did this year. We didn't put out a whole lot of videos. Part of the issue was the fact that we didn't have a lot of go-kart stuff going on. I mean, we got the go-karts out, but we're not going crazy switching out motors and things like that. We're more focused on what kind of quality products we can deliver to you guys. So as you know, our main thrust here at the Go-Kart Guru is to provide a means for you to be able to build your own go-kart, or at least fix the go-kart that you have, or a guide for when you do buy a go-kart, what you're getting yourself into. We have started officially the Model T Go-Kart store this year. I think we had it last year a little bit, but we've developed it a little bit more this year. In that, what happened was I have on the web page different types of go-karts that you can find to look into, and I had Model T go-karts on there as a web page, and we even went and bought a Model T go-kart just to see, you know, what it was all about. And basically what it came down to is people are asking me continually, how do you fix these? Where do you get parts for these? And so we decided that we would go all in and start helping people out by providing parts. So we started supplying things like light bars, lights, a radiator cap. You can get rear hubs with keys on them. You can't find those anywhere. They're actually some kind of weird zinc casting that they have. We make them out of a high quality 6061 aluminum. This year is new to us. We supply a front hub, which has a bearing on it. We actually had in our experimentation, we broke off a hub. It was kind of embarrassing when we were doing a test, and we weren't even testing for that front hub at all. We were testing for the rear wheel when we were doing it, and we broke off the front wheel, and in looking at it, I could see that there was a deficiency in the design, and that was it didn't have bearings. It was just running on a raw bolt, which was exacerbating things. So we designed a hub with bearings on it, and that we released this year. Also, one of the big issues with at least an older Model T go-kart is that it'll get bumped, someone will crash into something and snap off one of the fender corners, and then they'll send it to a body shop to get it repaired, and half the time it's not repaired correctly anyway. So we went ahead and we modeled, we got it scanned. We have a 1955 go-kart that somebody sold us. They wanted to get rid of it, so we bought it, and it's complete with wood spindles and everything, but it's not in any shape. It didn't have an engine or anything, but it did have parts that we could look at, like a steering wheel, obviously the wood rims, wood spoked rims anyway, and the seat and the transmission and the fenders. But the fenders were broken, but I could see that they could probably be salvaged somehow. And the best way to salvage them would be to scan them, get a three-dimensional scan of those fenders, and then mirror the scans, because they were broken in the opposite way. In other words, one had one side broken, the other side had one side that was good. So I figured, even back in the day in the 1950s, it probably got it pretty good. So we mirrored them, and basically I had both fenders scanned, and then I took the good part mirrored it over to the bad part, and it was the same thing on this end, mirrored it over to the back part. So they both had parts that were bad, but we pieced them together that way. Then what I did was I made a model, 3D printed model, made a model of it, and then we 3D printed it, and then I gave it to the body shop, and then they pieced it in, and it looks perfect. So they pieced it in, feathered it in over a couple of weeks. I think it took about 6 weeks before everything was finally done, and we got it released, I believe, around August. So we have complete fenders now that you can purchase, and they are made better than the originals. They're a little bit thicker. They have all the same exact profiles that you would have had in the 1950s, and they look fantastic. We sold probably about 3 pairs so far, and I think we have like 2 or 3 pairs left, and if you're interested. So anyway, that was one thing we invested in. I think the elephant that's sitting in the corner is the big one that we went for, and that was the wheels themselves. We cast them out of aluminum, and basically we were modeling them after the plastic ones that are out there that break half the time. So if you have a plastic rim, these look identical to whatever you had. We are also currently working on patterns for the diamond-shaped profile spokes, the ones that were made in Taiwan. So we're working on the pattern for that. I'm not sure. I probably will put out a survey to see if anybody's really interested, because right now we primarily, well, we only do offer the aluminum rims, and we were making them ourselves for a while in the beginning, and then it just became too much work on our end. I mean, we weren't being freed up enough to do other projects that were needed. So it was, for example, people would order them, I think they were ordering them like on the 4th of July, and they were expecting them the next week. Well, we only had like maybe 2 because we had cast them, and then my machine shop, to get a better price, wanted more than just 2. They wanted like 6, 10. So I think around August, September, we just went gangbusters casting them, and it was taking quite some time to get them cast because we can only cast 1 at a time. We can't cast like 2. So I figured what I should probably do is talk to a foundry and see if they'll work with me using the tooling that we've developed. And I found a guy across town who was more than willing to work with me. And the other issue was that because the economy was taking a hit, they were low on work, so they were happy to get that work. And it worked out to be a win-win for both of us. And it was actually kind of a really cool partnership that we've done with them, in that they were more than willing to work with me and see how my process was. I set up a video to show them how to do it, and we got a good deal going. So it does cost more than what I was expecting, but you know, that's part of doing business the way it is. So we have them cast, get them back. I sent them to a machine shop still, and he's happy now that we can take, you know, he has a bigger order. So in that regard, we do have them in stock, in case you're wondering. We have them in stock now, and we can turn them around pretty quickly. We're trying to stay on top of that for this year. So there shouldn't be any big lead times when you order wheels. The one thing that we improved on was our lead time as well on the brake system. We can get a brake system turned around in a week. And the main reason for that is we finally broke down and bought a lathe. So we can machine our own hubs all the parts we cast here, so it works out pretty good. So I guess we would say that this year is the year of casting and the year of the Model T Go-Kart. That kind of worked out for us. Meantime, to expand our reach to help people, we've also purchased a larger CNC machine. I found that on Facebook Marketplace, of all places. And it will expand our capabilities to help people out. One of our ambitious projects that we're going to be working on is a V8 engine, and that's just a side project that we're thinking of trying. And basically what that's going to have, it's a little V8 engine about this big. I know you guys have probably seen the Connolly engine. It's a little bit bigger than that and has a little bit bigger displacement. I think the Connolly engine has like if I remember, they have a 609 or something like that, and that stood for 6 cubic inches. We're actually bigger than that. We're 300 cc's. I don't recall what that is in actual numbers. Let's look here. Got my little sheet here. We are 18 cubic inches. So we're seeking to be around 9 horsepower. And if you're running alcohol, you probably get around 18 horsepower out of it. So with our casting capabilities and our machining capabilities, we should be able to develop this V8 engine, we're hoping, this year. We already have it started designed on the CAD, and believe it or not, the hardest part is the cylinder head, of all things. So getting the water passages in and all that. But on the upside, it's not going to be using some weird parts that we only provide. It'll have parts that will go to a 25cc Honda weed whacker. So the pistons will be the same and the valves will be the same. The connecting rods will be different because on a Honda weed whacker you can't pull the rods off. They're all part of the crank system. It's all one unit. And so we'll have our own rods developed, and a crankshaft we're going to be working on through a joint venture with a guy across town, or we might do it ourselves. We'll see how it goes. The hardest part about the whole thing is getting the oiling to be right and the cooling, and obviously the ignition and timing and all that. But the big ones are those. So we're pretty excited about that. It'll be just a little V8 engine. It'll fit right easily inside the Phi Alpha 10, and it'll hook up directly to a centrifugal clutch or a variable speed clutch system. And to start out with, it'll be just a hand start deal. And the nice thing about that is that it'll have the ability, it'll have an authentic sound to it. That's what we're looking for. So that it's just a project that we're going to be doing for ourselves. It'll be something fun to do, and also be able to show that we can actually do stuff like that. And it's something I want to work with my son with anyway. Okay, so we have next thing on the list, we've a 10-inch steering wheel we're working on. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but the steering wheel we offer is for a Model T go-kart from the 1950s. So its size was like 8 inches. I think maybe 8.5 inches. So we're going to the larger one that was offered in 1973 with the crew cut Model T go-kart. The McDonough version had the smaller steering wheel. We're offering the larger one, and right now we're working on the tooling for that. We have a process that we use to do that, and that's kind of a lead-in to another product that we're thinking of doing, and that is having a aluminum class, shop class kind of thing, because there's a lot of ways to do casting, and we have gone through the whole list of it. I mean, because we were trying to do wheels, it was taking a lot of time. We were trying to cut down on what time was required. And one of the big hurdles is obviously sand itself. Sand is, you can go get your play sand, but you want to make it dry. That's an obvious one. And then you can't just throw a little clay in there and expect it to hold the way you want to. That's not going to be fast and duplicatable. So we have a process that we've developed that uses similar to what they do in foundries. I've contacted foundry supplies, and we use the sodium silicate method. You probably, if you look online, you'll see that people use sodium silicate, but then they have to inject CO2 gas. And we were doing that for a while, but the big problem is you can't get the CO2 where you want it half the time. So what we use is a sodium silicate with a catalyst that sets in about 30 minutes. And it's really cost effective. You can do small batches, mix it up, and harden in about an hour if you're doing it in the basement because it's colder for us. And then, so what I can do is set up molds, let them sit for a day, come back, and then just keep doing that for a week, and then we'll be set up for doing whatever we need to do. There are other processes where you can mix stuff into the sand and make it go faster, which I do. If you really need it in a crunch, you can get something done in an hour without doing the formal compacting sand and all that. We just made a part, for example, for my kid's car. He needed some sort of aluminum bracket to hold his muffler up, some sort of like bracket that kind of goes like this with a U shape, and I just told him to pack some clay around it, and then we spray painted it a little bit so that it wouldn't stick to the sand very well. And then we packed it with sand, let it sit for about 20 minutes, and then we popped the part out, scraped everything out, put the cap on, put a sprue hole in there, brought it out to the table. Meantime, we already had the aluminum melting and cast it. So we were done in an hour with a part, and that's the capabilities you can do with aluminum if you know what you're doing. So that's one of the things that I wanted to do, is offer a product, a class product, probably about 5 classes. I think I spelled it out. What do I got here? Basically encapsulates, what do we have here? The basics, which is like sand, what kind of sand, what kind of tools do you need, what kind of furnace to buy. That's kind of a big one too. People are shocked by how low cost it actually is. It really isn't that hard to get into, and it's quite fun when you do it. But then there's the patterns, how to develop a pattern with a 3D printer. That's a big one actually. You can get a reasonable 3D printer for relatively low cost, and a 3D printer can do a lot for you. That coupled with some advanced molding techniques that I use, and then gating and understanding how the material flows. It's not really that intuitive how things flow, and there are programs out there which are pretty expensive, so we just give you some tips on how to set up your system so that you'll get good parts every time. It really has to do with the wave front of the material coming in and making sure that the aluminum isn't held back. But at the same time, it's cooling all at the same time, so you want to make sure everything's filling right. And then we have some ways that we can do some quick casting. So we make risers. We have little riser tools that we've developed, and so any excess sand that we have for whatever we're dealing with, we'll make risers. So we'll have risers sitting all over the place, ready to go, so we're not caught, wasting material. We can make cores, hollowed out parts. That's our specialty. That's not really that difficult with the process that we do. So the engine block that we're talking about isn't going to be that difficult for us with the type of sand we're using, which is actually foundry sand. We found a foundry sand supplier, and the sand binder is a foundry supplier. So all that stuff we'll make it so that the the sand will come out, because that's a big deal. Then we actually get into plaster casting, lost wax, lost PLA, and lost foam, and tell you how easy or hard that process is. I would agree that you could get some higher grade quality parts, but what happens is you try to go for quality, the time that it takes to do it goes up. So there's a happy medium between quality, time, and cost. It's like a cross point, and that's kind of where it is. That's the main reason why lost wax and plaster casting are expensive, because they go past that cross point for I guess I would call the most cost-effective way, and I guess there's some economic term for whatever you want to call that. Okay, and then the last one is how you can make money doing sand casting, and so that's a product I'm thinking of doing this year. We'll see. It would be complete with movies. Trouble with movies is you got to have a good quality movie, when you're doing it, and you can't do everything. So that's my big downside. One guy trying to do everything is really tough. Okay, so we cover everything here. We did get rid of, it was some sad times, we got rid of 3 wood go-karts this year. We needed the space, so we got rid of the Phi Alpha 20. I had it on Facebook Marketplace, and a guy locally bought it, and then he kind of got tired of it and sold it. So I saw it was on Facebook Marketplace again, and he sold it for like $100. So I'm glad it didn't get turned into wood chips or anything like that. That was encouraging to see that actually it got used. They painted it, and then the first wood go-kart that we ever made, we put down at the end of the driveway, and I think we said, like, I just said free, because it was made out of old stuff, and I figured we'll see if anybody takes it. Well, I went down to the neighbors to just see how they were doing. When I came back, it was gone. So that was less than a half an hour. So it's out there somewhere. Somebody's using it. And then the final go-kart that we got rid of as well, because we needed the space, is the little General. I just put it down at the end of the driveway again and said free. And again, it was gone in less than a half an hour. And it's not like we live out in the middle of everywhere, like downtown, wherever. And then somebody just picked it up. So somebody wanted it, and hopefully they're having a good time with it. So that is the year in review. The highlights are that we're going to be coming out with 2 products, a 10-inch steering wheel. Actually, another one, I skipped on that, and there was a steering gear setup. We plan on, because we have a CNC machine now, we can make gearing that would actually be made out of steel instead of aluminum. I wasn't even comfortable considering that. We could do a centered part. We're considering that, but it would be like a steel centered part. But since we have the CNC machine, I would think it would be relatively easy to make a program to at least CNC out the gear profiles of that. We'll see. It is a very small gear, and it could be hard to do. It's not going to be something that's going to be done in 10 minutes, because it's so small. It's going to take multiple tool changes to get the profile right. We'll see. The bigger gear can be made out of aluminum. I believe it is. So we'll probably end up doing that. And I'm also going to take a look at the actual way it steers. I'm not really happy with the way it steers. One way steers good, but the other way doesn't steer as well. We'll see if we can improve that. So that's another thing that we're looking at. And obviously the V8 engine. Maybe we'll do a 4-cylinder too. We'll see. So If you have any questions, be sure to go to our contact page on the GoKartGuru.com and give us a holler. Thanks for watching.